You're just in time for your weekly, most comprehensive look at the world of business and economics. Welcome, this is Business Redefined, and I am Julius Amboko. And tonight we are taking to the skies. 24 years after Kenya Airways was privatized and listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, a bill is set to be tabled before the National Assembly seeking to renationalize the airline. The National Aviation Management Bill of 2020, developed by the National Assembly's Transport Committee, has been touted as the latest proposal which seeks to steer the airline away from financial headwinds. Kenya Airways reported a 12.9 billion shilling loss in the full year ended December 2019, a deterioration from the 7.56 billion shillings loss posted in the year ended December 2018. These losses have not been without a burden to the taxpayer, with the National Treasury currently on standby to provide a prop for the cash-strapped airline. In January 2020, the National Treasury, which holds a 49% stake in the airline, extended a 5 billion shilling commercial loan to the airline to facilitate an engine overhaul program to meet its working capital requirements. Additionally, data from the National Treasury shows that the government has guaranteed Kenya Airways debt to the tune of 76.7 billion shillings as at the end of June 2019. Is Kenya Airways a viable business? Can the airline tide through the COVID-19 crisis, which has necessitated the halting of international travel? Our starting point this week is a report filed following the Kenya Airways investor briefing and the release of their results last week. Despite crossing the 5 million passengers mark for the first time ever in 2019 and posting the strongest growth in revenues ever since it commenced operations, Kenya Airways slumped deeper into the loss territory in 2019, posting a 12.9 billion shillings loss. Speaking during the investor briefing held virtually on Wednesday, Kenya Airways Board Chairman Michael Joseph said that a bill for the renationalization of the airline is presently before the Attorney General and should thereafter be headed to the National Assembly.
This bill, we are waiting for it to go to Parliament. Apparently, it is still with the Attorney General. From my information is that it will go to Parliament at the first opportunity that we have, and I'm hoping that it will come up in the next few weeks.
Reports indicate that the bill provides for a buyout of other shareholders by the government and the formation of an aviation holding company to run the airline and the Kenya Airports Authority. The halting of passenger flights in light of COVID-19 has left the carrier relying on cargo flights, and the management now indicates that 1,600 tons of flowers have been airlifted to Europe alongside another 2,600 tons of foodstuffs, among other cargo traffic.
What we're doing is this. First of all, look at routes where we think we'll be able to build traffic quickly enough. Secondly, we look at routes that were giving us a positive contribution to the entire network.
Julius Amboko, NTV. And remember, before we continue, you can be part of this conversation by tweeting at NTV Kenya at AmbokoJH. The hashtag is Business Redefined. Now, in October 2018, Kenya Airways tabled a privately initiated investment proposal seeking to take over the management and operation of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through a 30-year concession agreement. The airline argued that the move would better position the two entities to strengthen their synergies and boost Nairobi's position as an aviation hub in East and Central Africa. The plan was rejected by the National Assembly, which argued that the government and the people of Kenya stood to lose should that arrangement have received the green light. Now, shortly, I'll be joined by the chairperson of the National Assembly Transport Committee, that is David Pkosing, to shed more light on this. But before that, let's dig into some numbers regarding Kenya Airways and to look at the state of its financial health, because this has been a matter of critical interest. If you look at the results for 2016, 2017, 2018 and 2019, the loss numbers are reflected here. Of course, 2016, we had the record loss of 26.23 billion shillings. In 2017, there was a slight improvement, but still in the loss territory of about 10.21 billion shillings. And in 2018, it improved further to 7.56 billion shillings. You'll remember this came in light of the financial restructuring which happened in terms of the debt swap taken by a number of banks. Now, 2019 is where we had a bit of a challenge because the loss now deepened again, getting to about 13 billion shillings. And of course, Kenya Airways has indicated this was due to the changes in financial reporting standards, which we have highlighted in the story. On to the next one. Previous interventions by to try and aid the state of KAA in February 2020, which is the latest, the National Treasury, which is the Ministry of Finance, extended a 5 billion shilling loan to KAA, which I already mentioned, to try and help it in terms of its working capital requirements. December 2019, the Treasury wrote off debt to the tune of 24 billion shillings, which is quite a sum, of course, which was a targeted intervention by the government to try and prop the airline. And of course, in June 2017, we had a number of banks in the financial restructuring exercise to the tune of about 44 billion shillings. So those are some of the measures which have been taken thus far. But let's look at some critical numbers for KQ. Of course, the passenger numbers, because largely the airline draws its revenue from passenger traffic. There has been a steady increase, and 2019 was the first time it actually crossed the 5 million passengers mark. But you have seen the increase has been quite steady, though not quite significant, but of course a matter of celebration for the company, which has been relying on this as the key revenue driver. We shall be delving deeper into these numbers with David Pkosing right after the break to look at the whole idea of renationalization of the airline, what it means, and some of the questions coming in from viewers. Will this mean that people will lose jobs in terms of the restructuring that could happen? More after the break.
Do your gums hurt?
Yeah.
Does your toothpaste contain sage, eucalyptus, myrrh, chamomile?
All that in one toothpaste?
Yes, try Colgate Herbal. Colgate Herbal contains nature's best herbs and Colgate's fluoride technology to give you strong teeth and healthy gums.
Ah, Colgate Herbal.
Let's go. Colgate Herbal for strong teeth and healthy gums naturally.
Basic protective measures as guided by the World Health Organization. Clean hands frequently with soap and clean water. Cover nose and mouth when coughing and sneezing with a tissue or flexed elbow. Avoid close contact 1 meter or 3 feet with anyone with cold or flu-like symptoms. If you have fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical care early. Avoid raw or uncooked animal products. Help the world put an end to the spread of respiratory diseases by sharing this message with a friend. Message brought to you by Sour Herbal Family Bath Soap.
Who wants to answer? Mary?
Mary has a toothache.
Oh, I see. And who knows why?
Because her tooth is too big.
No, it might be a hole in her tooth called a cavity. That's why I brush twice a day using Colgate.
Imagine this is your tooth and these are food acids that cause cavities. Colgate with calcium and fluoride helps prevent cavities
For maximum cavity protection.
and now available in a 12-gram sachet for fresh breath. Only 15 shillings.
Wow, what a run! Heung-min Son from inside his own half has scored! Staggering! Just staggering! Drama from day one! Messi tries a shot! Leo Messi celebrates it! This is the league we want to watch! Where does football go from here?
The wait is over. Live sport is coming back. Stay connected to DSTV.
At Timasako, we are a reflection of you. We are a stable, financially sound institution providing tailor-made services to add value to your life, time and money. We are guided by your aspiration. We are Timasako, a true reflection of you.
Amar Sanitizer is an alcohol-based sanitizer containing ethanol, which has a broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, killing bacteria, viruses and fungi. Amar Sanitizer is enriched with aloe vera, making it gentle on your hands.
Welcome back to Business Redefined. Tonight we're focusing on matters Kenya Airways and the proposed renationalization through the National Aviation Management Bill of 2020. And as I did mention, you can be part of this conversation on Twitter at NTV Kenya, at AmbokOJH. The hashtag is Business Redefined. And I'm joined by the chairperson of the National Treasury Transport Committee, David Pkosing, who is the man behind that bill. And David, just to begin our conversation tonight, this proposal takes me back to 1996 when Kenya Airways was privatized. Of course, the whole idea was to anchor it better on the profitability path. Now we seem to be renationalizing, hoping to realize profitability again. Where does this leave us?
Amboko, I think we've been concentrating, or you have been concentrating, on what I call micro. And micro here is that you're looking at helping or something like that in KQ. Let me tell you this. Let me set the record straight. And for the people of Kenya to understand. The understanding is our government, our president, intended that we consolidate aviation assets. And Mboko, take this very carefully so that you can be using every time. That the macro, the objective of all this that is going on now, and particularly now, the nationalization, to the National Aviation Management Bill 2020 is to consolidate aviation assets. What do you mean by consolidation? Of course, putting together aviation assets like Kenya Airways, Jomo Kenyatta, that is JKA, and KAA. Why? So that these aviation assets can be able to talk with each other, not to each other. What is happening now as I speak to you is that those assets, because they are separate, they are talking to each other, not with each other. Number two, so that they can also leverage on each other. So that one organization cannot benefit vis-a-vis or killing the other organization. Amboko, that is, I will tell you, that is the macro, that is objective of Jubilee government.
I see. And staying on the subject of what's the macro idea, of course, here we want to consolidate assets and to better get synergies here. But the challenge is this. Finally, you cannot run away from this. KQ is a business. And the whole idea of a business is to return profit. That question you cannot evade.
I will explain that. And that is where we went wrong. Amboko. That's where we went wrong. I will tell you this, having been a chairman of transport here for more than 2 years. Let me tell you, when we place profits on our transport sector, we lose the objective. The objective of transport sector, and I want the people of Kenya to listen to this very carefully, the objective of the transport infrastructure is not necessarily to make profit, but it is to evacuate the population. For example, Mboko, if we are to put our profits, then we should put profits even on the roads. That the road we are building from here to Kapenguria, or the road we are building here from here to Nairobi, how much are we getting as returns as the people of Kenya? So I think, of course, I will not lose the opportunity to tell you, yes, KQ is making losses. But if you look at that, you are looking at it against what? Against the idea that Kenya Airways should be a profit-making organization. If we leave it like that, they can even put an air ticket at 1 million. And that is why, Mboko, I want to go back to the macro, the Jubilee macro plan that must be delivered. Of course, it has been Mboko approved by the cabinet that we need to consolidate our aviation assets. And that is the reason why we are going this direction.
And quick question here, and really from the public, out of public interest rather, I should say. The proposed renationalization, will it eventuate in the loss of jobs by some of the staff who are already at KQ, for example? And what does this mean in terms of their terms of service, for example?
That is a very good question, Mboko. And I'm sure that is a concern. As the bill now is in Parliament, is in the House. Therefore, that's actually what I may call concerns of employees. I will tell you this. The reason why, and then the government, Jubilee government and our president, wanted to consolidate the aviation asset is to create jobs for the people of Kenya. That's number one. Why do we want to consolidate? To create jobs for the people of Kenya. How do you create jobs? By making Jomo Kenyatta Airport and Nairobi a hub in Africa. What is the meaning of a hub? A hub means that Kenya and Nairobi becomes an exit point to the entire world. Everybody wants to go anywhere, whether you want to go to Europe, you must come to Nairobi. In the entire Africa. If you want to go to Asia, you come to Nairobi. If you want to go to Europe, you come to Nairobi. That is the meaning of making it a hub. In that way, therefore, we make Nairobi. Our Jubilee government wants to make Nairobi a financial hub for the African entire region. And therefore, we must make Nairobi a hub. And that one creates what, Mboko? Creates jobs. So if you are creating jobs, and I want Kenya Airways staff to listen to me, if it is the objective of government to create jobs, then you are not going to lose a job. Because our idea is to create more jobs. So Mboko, tell them, there's nobody who's going to lose a job. We want to make Nairobi a hub. Everybody who wants to go anywhere in the world, come to Nairobi. And when you're coming to Nairobi, bring money. That is it, Mboko. Tell them they're getting their jobs.
Let me ask you, Chair, regarding this same issue. Because you're talking about jobs and sustaining of jobs, there must be money to sustain the jobs. I'm just curious to know how significantly will this proposed bill, should it get the parliamentary green light, enhance the efficiency and performance of the airline?
A very good concern. Amboko, yes, it will create a lot of synergies. First of all, that is very important. Get the synergy between the aviation assets. And when you have aviation assets, Amboko, you know, working with each other, for each other, you know what's going to happen? The first benefit that's going to come is, for KQ particularly, KQ will benefit from a better balance sheet. Because Amboko, look here, let's be honest with the people of Kenya and ourselves. How can you have KQ making losses and KAA making profits? So how is KAA making profits? If you look at it very carefully and closely, 70%, close to 70% of KAA business comes from KQ. And KAA cannot help KQ even when it is struggling. So how is that business? How is that relationship moving, Amboko? And that is why we are losing. If, for example, these aviation assets were working together and talking with each other, we might not have realized some of these losses we are talking about. And I'll give you a quick one. When we improve the balance sheet of the aviation holding company, it means that that is an improvement of also KQ balance sheet. In that way also, Amboko, quickly, what can happen is that we can renegotiate those expensive loans that KQ took at a time when they were not supposed to have actually taken. I will tell you this, Amboko. The things we are doing now would have been done when actually it was supposed to be done. And I will say it was supposed to be done during Nakuni's time.
Okay.
We made a failure. But Amboko, I am not, as a chair, I am not a geologist to come and dig what happened in the past. We, Jubilee, are not going to be geologists to dig what happened in the past. What we are saying is that we don't want to leave our country. Our president has been saying this. He doesn't want to leave the country poor or badly as he found it.
Okay.
We want to improve it, and that is why we are a team in improving this. And that is a macro, Amboko. Please remember the macro thinking of this strategy and law.
Quick question, David. Talking about the balance sheet of whether it's KQ or the consolidated assets altogether,
yes.
How much of capital injection do you think this will need? Because you're getting into the budget season, of course, this will be a matter of interest.
You know, I'm not going to look at it that way, Amboko. What I will look, and more important, and I think this good as a context is, as you said earlier, KQ has gotten a surety from government of close to 72 billion. That 72 billion, I mean 76 billion, you know, is majorly going to loans. And these loans are from the banks, local banks, and also leasing. And I think where we have expensive undertaking, Amboko, is the leasing of the aircrafts. That is where I will say we might have to relook at it. The advantage of it now, Amboko, is that, and when we were doing the inquiry, we realized, Amboko, that we entered into, or KQ management entered into about, the cost of the money we borrowed to lease the aircraft. And Amboko, I don't want the people of Kenya to misunderstand leasing. Leasing is an international concept. It's actually allowed for airlines to do leasing.
Yeah.
But the loans were slightly, and I look at it, it's more than 20% expensive than what other people are paying. Why? Because when KQ was going into those loans, the balance sheet was started. They had no security. And therefore, they entered into that. That is why some of us are very convinced. My committee is extremely convinced that once we have an improved balance sheet,
okay,
the most important and number one we need to renegotiate are those leases, Amboko. And we will get it. We'll get there.
Talking about the renegotiation of leases, what time frame are we looking at? Because this bill is still with the Attorney General, hasn't gone to the National Assembly. Kenyans are curious to know.
No, I want to assure the people of Kenya that the bill now is National Assembly. The issue of all being in Attorney General is not true. Now it is in National Assembly. So take it from me as the Chair of Transport. And I'm looking at it this way, Amboko, in terms of delivery. And let me tell you this: there is no better time that this bill is in Parliament than now. Why? Because it will allow our government, executive government, the President and our ministry, it will allow them the best opportunity to reorganize and to re-engineer our economy after COVID-19 epoch, Amboko. And therefore, I'm looking at it this way in practical terms. The worst scenario, we'll have this bill, hopefully that my colleagues in Parliament will agree with us as a committee. We will have this bill signed by the President in August.
I see.
That's the worst scenario. The earliest scenario, by mid 20th July.
Supposing this does not sail through Parliament, what next, David?
That's not in my dream. I'll tell you this, Mboko, why? Because the report we took through Parliament and we took through all processes that are required, and it was approved by Parliament. So it cannot be all of a sudden, and this is my hope and my thinking. It cannot be that all of a sudden the report that was approved by Parliament, which Mboko, it is actually the cornerstones of this bill. Nothing changed from the report in this bill. What is happening is that the bill is just only now to actualize what Parliament approved as what to be done in consolidating the assets. And therefore, it's very difficult, Mboko, for yes, there might be amendments. That is true. But in terms of Parliament killing, how can Parliament kill its own baby, Mboko? Can you kill your baby? Have you? Do you have? I hope you have a baby. I'm seeing you have one. But you can't kill your baby.
Let's get to the tail end of the conversation, David. KQ initially had a plan which had tabled before the National Assembly, which your committee rejected and the whole National Assembly at large. How starkly different is the bill you're now proposing vis-a-vis the privately priced investment proposal KQ had tabled?
It is slightly different and fundamental. The reason being, Mboko, you know, what was before, what came before, it had not even reached Parliament. It was still a concept negotiated between Kenya Airways and Kenya Airports Authority and maybe Treasury. And the idea was, and of course now you know what happened. Then there was complaints and then there were demonstrations. And that is why it found its way through to Parliament and my committee through Article 95 of the Constitution and Standing Order 216. Because then we had to say, what is the problem? Why are people demonstrating? So when that PIIP came to be before my committee, we called the ministry. And we asked the ministry, what did you want to achieve? Leave alone the PIIP. Leave that aside. That is a strategy. But what is a macro? And they told us, Mboko, the macro is the consolidation of assets. And then we told the ministry, and they gave us approval by the cabinet, consolidating the assets. Then we told the ministry, okay, fine, we are now professional. From this point of view, let's look at it. Then we ask ourselves as a committee, if the government wants to consolidate aviation assets for purposes of making Nairobi great, for purposes of making Nairobi a hub or Jomo Kenyatta a hub,
yes,
is this the best strategy? It was not, Mboko. Why? Because KQ, as it was and as it is a private entity.
Okay.
So how do you put a private entity with a public entity?
Okay.
The legal mechanism is not applicable, and that is why we went for nationalization.
My final question, David, and really just to circle back to what I'd asked you earlier, I have you on record that should renationalization of KQ happen, there will be no losses of jobs.
Yes, we want to create jobs, Mboko. That is the principle of Jubilee government. We want to create jobs. And now after COVID-19, what do you expect, Mboko? Create more jobs?
The more the reason we should be worried, don't you think, about the jobs?
We must, let me tell you, it is the responsibility of government, Mboko, to create jobs. Let me assure you that it is the responsibility, and our president has been on forefront in promising the people of Kenya creation of jobs. What is the aim of the Big Four? The Big Four is to engineer creation of jobs for our youth in this country.
Okay.
The Big Four is supposed to engineer and create more economy for this country. It is the responsibility of government, Mboko, to create jobs. Let me assure you, we have no other responsibility. But now Parliament is supposed to facilitate those strategies of executive and the president, so that the president and executive can realize the dream on behalf of the people of Kenya. Creation of jobs, Mboko.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've been speaking to David Pkosing, who is the chairperson of the National Treasury Transport Committee, and he's been shedding light on the bill which seeks to renationalize Kenya Airways. Of course, it has to go through the House, and we'll see whether there'll be amendments or not, and whether it will sail through. He has given us a guarantee that all those who are involved with KQ at this point will not be losing their jobs. We shall hold that to account, because that's a matter of grave public interest. Shortly, we shall be having the markets review, but I should say before the markets review that KQ closed at $1.99, one of the biggest losers today, and let's take a look at how the markets happened.
Markets Review, proudly brought to you by Business.
And let's see the numbers for the shilling in terms of the NSE, the markets. The Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index closed at 1,948.08 points. In terms of change year to date, it's down 26.61 points. And in terms of change on day to day, that is compared to the last close, just by about 1 percentage point. Moving on to the Forex market, where we look at the currencies, the Kenya shilling gained marginally to close at 106.79 to the dollar. Against the sterling pound, it lost marginally again to close at 131.99. And again, against the euro, it lost marginally by about a percentage point to 118.95 points, I should say. And that's how the forex exchange markets closed the day. That has been our discussion today on Business Redefined, focusing on matters of the Kenya Airways. Of course, it's a matter of grave interest to the public, seeing how the national carrier will tie through. Last year, we had a loss, I should say, of 12.9 billion shillings. Let's see how this proposal to renationalize the airline goes. Let's do this again next week, same place, same time on Business Redefined. I've been your host, Julian Samboko. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.